Good evening and welcome everyone to another exciting installment of Biblical Interpretation in Second Temple texts. In our last class, we talked a little bit about what those Second Temple texts include, Apocrypha, Pseudepigrapha, Dead Sea Scrolls. And in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into a book that is one of the better known of the Jewish pseudepigrapha, the Book of Enoch. So just a moment while I say a little bit about why we're going to be looking at this book. So because the class is biblical interpretation, what I'd like to do is kind of use this book as a way to kind of look at how a character is interpreted. That's one of the things that is happening in this period, is not just interpretation of, and in fact, actually give me a moment, because I just realized that I wanted to start, of course, with the biblical text. So let me get that up on the screen. But one of the things I want to talk about is how a certain figure can kind of get loaded. You know, in the beginning, it's a certain how the same text can just short text can be so evocative that it leads to a character who plays a major role in Second Temple literature as a whole. So we're going to start actually with the biblical text for Enoch, and then we're going to talk about the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, as I've said numerous times, actually, is in other contexts, is actually a collection of books. And I'm going to introduce those books. In other words, I'm going to say, as we kind of go through them, I'm going to talk a little bit about each one and the date, because what we have in the Book of Enoch. So before I dive into the biblical text, let's talk a little bit about the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch was translated from Greek into Ethiopic and kept by the Ethiopian church as part of their canon. Okay. Into, even another word for Ethiopic is gez, right? It's called gez. So when they talk about gez, that's the Ethiopian scripture translated into Ethiopic. And the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch were part of the Ethiopian Christian canon. So there are numerous copies of these books in gez, which is not Amharic, right? But it has, obviously it's connected, but it's like it's an older language in which all the scriptures are maintained. And essentially what we have when we look at Enoch is this kind of collection of different books that have as their kind of connecting feature that they're all about this character Enoch, or that Enoch plays a role in all of them. But a lot of them are very different from each other, and they're from different periods, and they're kind of collected into this one book, right? There are 5 of them, of the pieces. It depends how you count it, but one way of counting it, you get kind of 5 subsections. So some people want to say it's like a Pentateuch, it's like a Chamisha Chumshei Torah, it's like the Torah of Enoch. That's that whole kind of idea of Enochic Judaism. I have to say, I disagree intensely with this whole idea of Enochic Judaism. We don't see a situation where someone's keeping the books of Enoch and not the other stuff, right? We do see a group of Jews, particularly, like, for example, in the Qumran community, they're keeping the books of Enoch, plus all sorts of rule books and all sorts of books based on the Torah. They're not saying that this is a whole different religion. There is no basis. I'm sorry. There is no basis for this idea of Enochic Judaism. You will find it, of course, among Italian scholarship, because they are base themselves on an Italian scholar who made this idea very popular. And he's very active in I should say it's Gabriele Boccaccini. He is a very nice guy. He's very active in kind of increasing scholarship. He has a seminar every year in Italy, and therefore it's absolutely, people kind of respect him, and for good reason. Like but this idea of Enochic Judaism although popular in Italian scholarship and a little bit elsewhere, there's really no basis for it. However, the importance of the Book of Enoch, there is a basis for that. In other words, the idea that Jews were reading this, Jews felt that the character was very important. And what we're going to do, and there's a certain story slash myth slash whatever you want to call it, called the story of the Watchers, which is itself a biblical interpretation of Genesis 6. It's Breshit Perek Vav. We're going to talk about that next class in depth. We're going to touch on it in this class because I really want to talk about the character of Enoch. And then next class, we're going to talk about the development of that story in Second Temple Judaism, also its biblical interpretation that kind of gets this power of its own and becomes this kind of creative force in itself, becomes something kind of almost basic to what many Jews understand in terms of where does evil come from, right? So let's get back to the text, because I know I've been talking kind of, disconnected from the text for a while. I'll share my screen. And here we are. Okay, so here we have Chanoch, Enoch. Okay, and let us Vayechi Chanoch 560 shana ve'oled Metushelach. Enoch lived 65 years and he had his son Metushelach. Right, V'talech Chanoch et Elohim acharei holidot Metushelach 300 shana ve'oled banim u'banot. And he walked with God. Now, I've put forth the idea that he's not walking with God, that in the Second Temple, in Second Temple interpretation, they may have read this not as walking with God, because who can walk with God, but as walking with angels, right? That he walked with angels afterwards. And then it says, Vahikol Yemei Chanoch 560 shana u300 shana. He lived 365 years, and of course, that number is going to be very important later. V'talech Chanoch et Elohim ve'einenu ki lakach oto Elohim. Right? He walked with God, or as I think Second Temple interpretation may have had it, walked with angels, and he wasn't. He was gone, right? Because God took him, or because, again, interpretation, because the angels took him. Now, this is tremendously evocative. What does that mean? He walked with God. What does that mean? He wasn't, because he took him. Why? What happened? And then in the Second Temple period, where they're talking a lot about angels and demons and what's going on in heaven. They become very interested in that when they weren't really that interested before. The question is, and what did he see when he was there? When he was up? Wow, he went up. What did he see? Right? So all of these are questions. And then we have, he lives for 365 years. That's going to become very important to Jews who later believe in a solar year. So they have this idea of, oh, he went up, he saw the heavens, he understood astronomy, he lived 365 years like the 365 days of the year. They weren't one of the things that, by the way, one of the issues that we have with Jews who believed in the solar year during the Second Temple period is they thought it was perfect. They didn't realize it had to have a leap year, right? So you have at Qumran, they have a calendar. It's 364 days, right? 364 days, and everything. It works so beautifully because it divides by 7 perfectly. So you have the day of the week. It's just wonderful. The only problem is that you can't possibly keep it for any real length of time without it messing up, because that's not how long the year is. They seem to. The question is, did they keep it or not? I think, and I checked my understanding on this with Yonatan Ben-Dov, whose thing is the calendar, and he kind of agreed, which means I probably heard it from him first. That probably what happened was they did in fact keep that calendar, and when it messed up, when it got too far from where it was supposed to be in the solar year, they were just like, oh, someone messed up. Oh, someone messed up. They messed up by a few days. We have to fix it, without recognizing that there is a leap year that you must have in a solar year if you're keeping full days in order to get it back on track. At any rate, Yes.
why can't they add, if it's like 1.25 days every year, why can't they after 5 years or so add another week?
There's no reason why they can't, but they don't say it. They don't say it anywhere. They act like it's perfect. The whole point, why are they all going, why, I shouldn't say the whole point. I'm building myself right on other scholarship here, right? But the idea is, why did they think, why was it so clear? Just to take a step back, the calendar. Okay, the calendar. The entire ancient Near East kept the lunisolar calendar. This whole area, not Egypt. Egypt kept the solar calendar, but the ancient, Assyria, Babylon, were all Persia, lunisolar calendar. In other words, a lunar year with adjustments for the solar, to keep to the solar season. All right. That's why in Elephantine, they can get a letter saying, hey, it's going to be Nisan, right? They don't have to say Nisan, which comes out to something other day of our month. No, everyone's keeping the same sort of months. That's why they could just take the Babylonian names, stick it on the biblical months, which of course are simply numbered. It's first month, second month, third month. They could take the Babylonian names and just stick them on without a problem. Everyone in this area is keeping the same type of month. In Egypt, they're keeping a solar year. The Greeks come through and they like comparing things. And they're like, hey, this solar year is perfect. It divides perfectly. There's no need for a leap year. It's perfect. And then the Jews who see this, they're like, oh, it's perfect. That must be what God wanted, because it's a perfect year. This must be what God wanted. So all the people, why were we keeping a lunar year? Because someone screwed up. Someone is not doing the right. So let's get things back on track. Let's do a solar year, right? Now, the thing is, but they didn't understand how solar years work. And with Enoch, it really just completely devolves into nonsense, because the guy who's writing the astronomical book, the one that we have, I'm not talking about the one from Qumran, but the one that we've got, he gets to a point where he's explaining something and then he realizes that he doesn't know, and then he just stops explaining it. It's like, it's a real mess, right?
Miriam, you mean one of the Ethiopic Enochs?
Yeah, in Ethiopia, yeah. So the Ethiopic Enoch has something called the Astronomical Book. Now, they connect the Astronomical Book, the book that we have now. They actually found a fragment of the Astronomical Book of Enoch in Qumran, but it doesn't completely match up, right? It's kind of a different book, right? It's kind of different. So the question is, how badly was it corrupted in the translation, because the person who was copying it didn't understand what was going on, all this sort of thing, and also different influences of maybe different astronomical books. There's a whole thing written about it by Yonatan Ben-Dov, but because I don't want to be the one to kind of teach that particular thing to you, because I get very lost in calendars. I have to tell you, it's like, it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, so let's jump into Enoch, and we'll see how this character, remember the very evocative idea of God or the angels took him, and he wasn't, because it took him, because either God or the angels took him, and that specific age. So those are kind of just the actual verses that are going to be kind of give birth to this character that becomes very central in kind of a genre of literature, you could say. Even I actually say genre, it's a little bit much because it crosses genres. So let's go into a translation of the book. I'm going to start with the beginning, even though it's and just do some very quickly, just because it's in theory it's a very good place to start. It's not really, but let's start with this. So the translation I'm using is Nickelsburg and Vanderkam. They have, oh, I see, you don't see it because of the blur. Nickelsburg and Vanderkam, they did the Hermenea volume of Enoch, and they did and you can get a fairly inexpensive paperback translation. The problem with this translation is it's an eclectic translation, which means they don't take you never know the basis of the translation. That's going to actually become important to us a little bit later in our discussion. You don't necessarily know what manuscript they're using for any particular word. The problem with Enoch is that everyone, and I'll show you later, for example, Nib, he took what he considered was the best manuscript of Enoch. That's what he translated. That's what a lot of us use, right? if you actually, but I know that Lawrence Stuckenbrook, I don't know when it's going to come out, but he had a project where he was going across Ethiopia and like just looking at all the there's so many copies of this to try and do some kind of critical edition, which we don't have. We don't have a real critical edition because what we mainly have is what Nib, for example, Nib thought was the best manuscript, and then we have, we have like the Ethiopic, right, and then his translation of that Ethiopic. So he actually photostated this is kind of photostated the manuscript with notes, and then you have the translation. Whereas here, this is eclectic, and so sometimes there are points where they have a translation. I'm not quite, and I think it's explained more in the full hermeneutic, but at any rate, let's go to, okay, so this is the introduction. The introduction is written after. So this is the first book. Chapters 1 to 36 is called the Book of the Watchers. This tells the story of the Watchers, who are angels who rebel against God. This is based on Breshit Vav, Genesis 6, 4 verses, the first 4 verses, where the angels mate with human women, right? And in the story of the Watchers, this becomes 2 sins with a third mixed in. One is mating with human women, which they're not allowed to do. Another one is teaching humans the art of certain knowledge which they should not have, which lead to how to make weapons. Women are taught makeup, right? And that leads to, of course, violence and lust. So bad, right? And then the third thing that's kind of mixed in is that one of the angels teaches them magic. That seems to be kind of a third little thread that's woven in. And then, of course, the angels must be punished. So Enoch is kind of the earliest version of the full story of the Watchers. The Book of the Watchers itself can kind of be split into 2 parts in terms of how this story is being told. We're going to look at this more next class. This is just the introduction that's written as after this book was written. The words of the blessing with which Enoch blessed the righteous chosen. And he took up his discourse and said, Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, who had the vision of the Holy One and of heaven. You can kind of hear that it's a little bit echoing maybe Bilam's prophecy. And he's kind of saying, oh, I'm going to tell you, the future. I'm going to tell you, about, and also, first of all, for Enoch, everything's the future, right? Enoch's supposed to be in one of the first generations, right? So everything he's saying is the future. Part of what he's saying, oh, God is going to come on Mount Sinai, right? He's going to appear with his army. This is all the future for Enoch, right? And by correctly predicting the future from Enoch's point of view, he's going to prove to you he knows the future. And then we're going to get eventually to prophecies of Enoch, which are the future for the audience, for the Second Temple audience, right? But let's just kind of jump ahead.
Question.
Yes.
So you said that this contains the most complete version of the Book of the Watchers. Are there other versions found in other places?
I mean the complete version of the earliest version. So what we have here is when you're studying like the story of the Watchers, not the Book of the Watchers. So the Book of the Watchers, actually, we have parts of it in Greek, which is nice because we have this book. It's good that you're asking also, because I forgot to mention that in general, Enoch was written in Aramaic. The Book of Enoch was written in Aramaic, translated into Greek, and translated from that into Ethiopic. I think that in certain cases it had the Aramaic in front of it, or was at least influenced maybe by certain biblical parallels. Like there's a point where it's retelling the story, it's talking about Noah, and it's using kind of a consistent word for what we would normally call the word Hamas, right? Like violence or sinful violence, and it's using and the if I remember correctly, it was a mata, that the Ethiopic is fairly consistent. So I think it's translating Hamas, but you have to kind of prove that if it has Greek in the middle. So yes.
Are you going to explain why the translation uses the word watchers? I believe in Hebrew it's irim, right? Which
Irim. Okay, thank you. Yes. So it's not only here. We have there's this kind of consistent translation of it as watchers also in the Armenian. I think it's Grigori. And it's probably because Irin, the theory is that it's translating Irin. We're used to the word Irin being angels. We have it in our Zmirot, and what we sing on Shabbat. We actually have the word in Qumran with a mem, in other words, a Hebrew version of Irim. And the understanding is that it is being translated as watchers because Er would be to be awake, and that angels never sleep. So it's translated as so the word that's being used is Irim or Irin, probably in Aramaic, and it's being translated as the watchers. Now, note that in general,
maybe today we can call them the woke.
The woke, yeah, we have to be careful though, right? That's yeah.
So Miriam,
But,
this Greek, the Greek translation that we have, where is that from? Where was that found? Who passed that on?
Oh, honestly, I'll have to look, and I'll tell you guys last because next week, because I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing.
Okay.
Okay, I'll look it up, so I'm not flubbing anything. You know that the dates and I don't always get along. I need to see it in front of me. Okay, so yeah, so let's continue past the introduction because it's a little bit less interesting. And here we actually have the rebellion of the Watchers. Now, the use of the word Irim is not consistently negative, but frequently the word Watchers. Like the word, it's not always. It's not even the word Watchers is not always used negatively, but it's usually used in reference to this particular story where it starts with really a quote from Genesis, you know, when the sons of men had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them. If we're going to look, and they say, okay, let's have wives. And here in Enoch, there's a Shemichaza kind of takes charge, and he kind of organizes all of them. So the question is, okay, so what does that have to do with Enoch? And I'm just going to, again, we're going to come back to the Watcher story next class. So I want to really just kind of jump into Enoch's character here and what's going on with Enoch. So why this almost is an excuse to kind of tell the story of the Watchers. We can tell again from the way it's three different threads and three different types of sins, three different angels that are dealing with it, that it's kind of been interwoven from other traditions that already exist before Enoch is written. Oh, one of the things I do want to say is the Book of the Watchers is generally dated 250 to 200 BCE or even earlier. I'd say 250 BCE. Like I've seen it dated 300, 350 to 250. It's considered very, very early. There is, of course, a desire from something which I really don't get, that somehow it predates Genesis. I don't see how you could say that. It's quite clearly an interpretation of Genesis. But that is an opinion that sometimes you'll see floating out there. So essentially what happens is that they cause all this disaster. All right. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about the story and its connection to the flood next week. But what happens is that the good angels, Michael and Sariel, Raphael and Gabriel, look and they say, okay, you guys are in trouble, right? Because essentially they've caused violence among people. It just caused terrible things. And so let's skip ahead to, we still don't have Enoch. What does Enoch have to do with this? So this is now we get to Enoch, right? So we have this whole string of Watchers, no Enoch, right? Noah is appearing, but no Enoch, right? Then in chapter 12, we get this. Now we're getting, okay, before these things, Enoch was taken, and no human being knew where he had been taken or where he was or what had happened to him. His works were with the Watchers, and with the holy ones were his days. And here Watchers is being used as just meaning angels, okay? And so then now Enoch is speaking. Enoch was standing, blessing God, right? And the Watchers said to him, okay, you are a righteous scribe. Go and say to the Watchers of heaven who forsook the highest heaven, the sanctuary of their eternal station, found themselves with women, blah, blah, blah. You will have no peace or forgiveness. So you go, you're a scribe, and there's an idea that a scribe here, a sofer, it's actually taking on kind of an actual official role of being almost a law clerk that you would have in, I believe, in the Persian Empire. This was already something that you had. So this is what they're saying. They're like, okay, you have this kind of job of a clerk, and you're going to go and kind of tell them that you are accused. All right. So you have to go and tell them, and they say to him, listen, could you take our petition up to heaven, right? So that we can get pardoned, because this is your job. You're kind of like, we're asking you as almost a clerk of the court or to intercede on our behalf. All right. And that's what Enoch does. He goes, and I went off and sat by the waters of Dan in the land of Dan, which is south of Carmon, to the west. I recited to God the memorandum of their petition until I fell asleep. And then what does he do? He has visions and he's raised up to heaven. Now, this gives us an explanation. Why was he taken? Why was he taken to heaven? Right? And here we have it explained as part of this bigger story that by this point is already a well-known story that is really accepted by many Jews, especially in terms of the origin of evil, etc. Again, we'll talk about more next time. And why does he go up to heaven? Because he is involved in this court case, as it were, between these sinning angels and God, and they have commissioned him to actually plead for them, right? And then, of course, and he says, I wrote up your petition, and in the vision it was shown to me thus, that you will not obtain your petition for all the days of eternity, but judgment has been consummated in the decree against you, that from now on you will not ascend into heaven for all the ages, right? And it has been decreed to bind you in bonds in the earth for all the days of eternity. In other words, this is a petition that's not going to be granted because you guys sinned, and you sinned in a big way, right? Anyway, so he goes up and he sees visions. And here we see the answer to the question that people are asking at this time: what did Enoch see when he was in heaven? Right? Clouds in the vision were summoning me, shooting stars and lightning flashes were hastening me and speeding along. I went in until I drew near to a wall built of hailstones, tongues of fire. And this was all super fascinating to people in this period. I want to say that I went into that house, and he describes all the kind of parts of heaven that he sees, right? I saw a lofty throne. Now, these are all things you can kind of pick up on your own and read, right? So I'm not going to go into, and it's kind of very repetitive. It's not, obviously this is interesting. I was looking and I saw a lofty throne. The appearance was like ice. Its wheels were like the shining sun. And the sound of the cherubim, and from beneath the throne issued rivers of flaming fire. Of course, this seems to be God's throne. And I was unable to see the great glory sat upon it. His apparel was like the appearance of the sun and whiter than much snow. No angel could enter into this house, look at his face, and no human could look at him. Okay, so he needed no counselors. Every word was deed. In other words, he's actually gone into the divine presence. And then God gives him, come here, you're not going to hear my words. And he's like, go and say to the watchers of heaven who sent you to petition on their behalf, you should petition in behalf of humans and not humans in behalf of you. This is the idea that angels are supposed to be, part of an angel's job is to petition for people. That is their job, right? They are meant to be interlocutors between the people and the divine. Again, this is something that we see more of in the Second Temple period. Why? Because there's been kind of a distancing from God, as it were. In other words, God is so great. How can we pray directly to God? Angels can help take our prayers to God, right? Angels can in a way pray on our behalf or ask for things on our behalf. This is something where we're seeing again this tremendous increase of interest of all of a sudden we have named angels. This is something that we get so used to reading these biblical passages where we're like, oh, okay, well, they're called men, but they're angels, or they are called angels and they're clearly angels, right? But we don't know who their names are. They're completely anonymous. until we get to Daniel, which is written in the Second Temple period, angels don't have names. Who names angels? Who cares? Who cares? They're God's messengers. They're blah, blah, blah. They go up to heaven. They do whatever they do. It's not our problem, right? We're here on earth dealing with earth stuff, right? Not in this period, though. Once we get to the Second Temple period, people care a lot about heaven. People have different, it's a different, we're getting to the point where they're talking about an afterlife, which is more than just being in a muddy pit, which is Sheol, right? Sheol, Shachat, is just this kind of holding time in the mud. Here we get to it's still not quite what we get to later on in terms of a real existence in an afterlife, like an interesting existence, because it's not interesting, it's kind of a holding pen. It's either I'm skipping through their punishment, but here we have, in fact, Enoch's journey, and this is a tour of heaven again. Okay, so he sees where the winds are from, right? Where are the winds kept? He sees the foundation of the earth. He sees a place that was burning night and day. So he sees, and he sees where the angels are imprisoned, right? And then he sees a place that was neither firmament of heaven above nor firmly founded earth. He sees all these different things that are in heaven. 7 archangels, etc., etc. So he goes to the place of punishment for the disobedient stars that have fallen. That is against the eternal order. You are evil stars, and you get imprisoned. Okay. Here, these are the stars of heaven that transgress the command of the Lord. They have been bound here until 10,000 years are fulfilled, the time of their sins. Okay, they have not stayed on the course they were supposed to stay on. This may also have to do a little bit with the calendar, perhaps. The prison of the angels, right? Now here, okay, so here, let's take a look at the beginning of this idea of the afterlife, okay? Then Raphael answered me, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said to me, these hollow places are intended that the spirits of the souls of the dead might be gathered into them. For this very purpose they were created, that here the souls of all human beings should be gathered. And look, these are the pits for the place of their confinement. Thus they were made until the day on which they will be judged, and until the time of the day of the end of the great judgment that will be exacted from them. So what is this? Is this hell? What is this? Guys, they're pits. They're confined here until the day that they're going to be judged. It's a holding pen. There isn't actually the conception here is not that anything really happens to human beings in heaven. There's kind of a holding pen waiting for the day of judgment. Okay, so here we have there I saw the spirit of a dead man making suit, and his lamentation went up to heaven and cried and made suit. So who is he? Let's skip ahead. This is the spirit that went forth from Abel, whom Cain his brother murdered. And Abel makes accusation against him until his posterity perishes from the face of the earth, and his posterity is obliterated than posterity of men. So here you have all he's doing, all Abel's doing. Abel's not going to, Abel's in the holding pen, and he's crying over what Cain did to him until all the descendants of Cain are wiped out. Okay. And note that, however, they're divided. And this, I'm pointing this out because this is kind of an earlier conception of what is going on in an afterlife, when before there was barely any interest. There was not an understanding of, oh, there's this afterlife where there's a differentiation, right? I asked about all the hollow places, why they were separated one from the other. And he answered me and said, these 3 were made that the spirits of the dead might be separated. And this has been separated for the spirits of the righteous, where the bright fountain of water is. And this has been created for the spirits of the sinners when they die and are buried in the earth, and judgment has not been executed on them in their life. Here their spirits are separated for this great torment until the great day of judgment, of scourges and tortures of the curse forever, that there might be a recompense for their spirits. There he will bind them forever. So it seems like you can read it either way, but it seems to be that they're in holding, they're being held, and the great torment's going to happen after the day of judgment. Okay, so everything's on hold for the day of judgment, right? Because these are the ones who didn't suffer in life. And again, and we've talked about this in other contexts, there are different, as we move through history, right? There are times when different theological problems raise their heads, right? Things that we take for granted as a theological problem, it's not considered the same sort of theological problem in an earlier generation. So this idea of someone who's wicked and isn't punished during his lifetime, or someone who's righteous and has a terrible life, that problem is solved in earlier biblical books by the idea that there's multi-generational punishment. Like someone was righteous, and so his children will do well, or someone was wicked, so his children will suffer, right? The idea that things are stretched out and things take time. Or someone was righteous, but his father was terrible, and now he's suffering for it. This was something that was a general idea that continued on also into the Second Temple period. But you already see the problem, and I've mentioned this before, with Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And also Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, when he says, in the future, it will not work that way. Whereas Ezekiel says it doesn't work that way now, right? There's no such thing as a child suffering for their parent. Well, if there's no such thing as a child suffering for their parent, why in the world is this guy who was a great guy, why is he suffering, right? And I know, and putting Job on the side where it's like everything's a mystery, right? That's not a great answer for Jews in the Second Temple period. Everything a mystery is a mystery. That's not so great. So like, what's going to happen? There is going to be a judgment day where there is punishment and reward. This is going to be evened out, right? Now, at a certain point, of course, that becomes already in the afterlife, things get evened out. But at this point, there's a lot of focus on the judgment day. That's when things are going to get evened out. That's when the wicked are punished and the righteous are rewarded. And again, it's frequently connected to this world. In other words, people are going to come back to life, or there's going to be a kind of a new existence, and then things are going to be evened out. I see this is we're going to continue Enoch next week. I hope you will allow me to, because there's a lot more interesting that has been written about Enoch. So let's continue on with our text here. Okay. So, and I'm doing this quickly because, again, you can pick this up and read on your own. One thing that's really true of Second Temple books is they're tremendously wordy. They're just hugely wordy, especially if you're used to biblical books, right? Like, did anyone knows like this week in the parsha? So like, Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, it's so short. It is so short. It's a teeny part of the parsha, right? It's like really short. And there's so much in it, right? And there's so much because it's so evocative, and there's so much, but here, Second Temple literature, I have to say, is the opposite. They will not use 3 words when 10 words will do. And this is what we're going to see, especially in Enoch.
Miriam?
They see them, yes.
In contrast to that, in the exact same parsha, you've got the story of Avram and Sdom, which is the total opposite, where and Avram says 50 and then 40 and 30, and it's so much more verbose than it really has to be, and it's sort of the opposite of Akedat Yitzchak.
Yeah, but but it gives you that sense of negotiation. It's like, and it's a lot of nerve. It's a lot of nerve. He's talking to God, and he's just like handling him down, like and then I mean, it's interesting. You can say that, right? Because it is absolutely repetitive, and you can say that it's meant to kind of imitate certain ritual texts that we know from very early, like Ugaritic, where this is a repetition, right? But it is making a certain point. I mean, I'm keeping myself, because I could just dive into that. Dialogue, and I'm keeping myself back. So I'll go back to Enoch. Excuse me. So here we are. Okay. So in other words, so he's seeing different mountains. He sees the tree of life, and right? And as for this fragrant tree, no flesh has the right to touch it until the great judgment, in which there will be vengeance on all and a consummation forever. In other words, why the tree of life is waiting for the judgment day, and then it will be given to the righteous and the pious, and its fruit will be food for the chosen, right? And so, and it will be transplanted at the holy place by the house of God, the King of eternity. They will rejoice greatly and be glad. They will enter into the sanctuary. Its fragrances will be in their bones, and they will live a long life on the earth, such as your fathers lived also in their days, and torments and plagues and suffering will not touch them. Note that this is the reward for the righteous and the pious, not an afterlife, a life. Okay, they're going to eat from the tree of life, and then they're going to live long the way they did in Genesis, right? The way those nice long lives, that's what they're going to get back. That's the reward. Okay. So we go on. We see, and the author here is keeping in mind that Enoch doesn't know stuff, right? Enoch is from very early on, so he has no idea about the temple. He has no idea about Jerusalem. So he's like, why is this land blessed and all filled with trees, but this valley is cursed, right? The cursed valley is Gay Hinnom, right? Gay Ben Hinnom, right? That is the cursed valley, right? For those who are cursed forever. Here will be gathered all the cursed who utter with their mouth an improper word. Here they will be gathered, and here will be their habitation at the last times in the days of righteous judgment. Again, waiting for the judgment day. That's when they get cursed in Gay Ben Hinnom, in Gehenna, right? That's when they get cursed, right? And on the other hand, of course, is the Temple Mount. On and on and on. It keeps going. He sees everything. It's wonderful. How beautiful is the tree? How pleasing in appearance? Lots of stuff. Go on and on and on. And then we get a summary, okay, in case we didn't have enough. Okay, so that is the Book of the Watchers. We're gonna dive into more of the Book of the Watchers when we talk about it looks like 2 weeks when we look at the story of the Watchers and how it develops. All right. So we are going to come back to this. The next book in the order of the book is the Book of Parables. The Book of Parables, or Parables of Enoch, it's also called, was written much later. Remember, we talked about the Book of the Watchers between 250 BCE, maybe even 300 BCE. Parables of Enoch is between 40 BCE and 70 CE. Why do we say this? Because the author of this book knew about the Parthians in 40 BCE, but did not know about the Roman destruction in 70 CE. So we can put it between 40 BCE and 70 CE, all right? And here Enoch is doing something else. He's giving you a vision, right? It's the coming judgment of the wicked. Here Enoch is fulfilling a different role, and we can already see there's been a development in his character, because if we go back to the biblical verses, okay, let's go back to the biblical verses. What do we actually have here? We see that we see that he walked with God, or like I said, there could be their understanding Elohim as angels, right? So he walked in heaven, let's say, okay? And then we know that he was no more, right? Because he was taken. We could just say he wasn't on the earth, let's say, right? And that he lived 365 years. So that's what we know. We don't know that he was a prophet or anything like that. But once we get to this book, yeah, he is prophesying things. And you can understand that this is, and we already saw this in the previous book that we looked at, which is that naturally, if he's taken up to heaven and the angels tell him things, now he's going to see the future, right? And he's going to tell you what the future holds, all right? He's not just going to say, here we have, again, the ascent to heaven. He's going to tell you, this is what's going on in heaven, right? Here we saw the chosen one, or the place of the chosen. It's not clear that he's talking about the chosen one actually, but here we see this idea of a Mashiach, right? A Messiah. Because remember when we talk, still in the Second Temple period, there are there's a lot of talk of Day of Judgment. There's a lot of talk of a Messianic age, not necessarily of a Messiah, not necessarily of a specific leader. So again, we see him describing what's going on in heaven, what's going to happen in the final judgment. Again, this is where everything's going to get evened out. And here we also talk about kind of astronomy, the storehouses of the sun and the moon, which are going to become very central in the astronomical book in terms of when the sun goes into its storehouse, the moon comes out of its storehouse, and it's a way of talking about kind of the cycles of the sun and the moon. This is seeing lightning, stars of heaven. And he has, so it's a series of parables. I'm going to kind of skip ahead to the astronomical book. Let's see if we can get to that. The astronomical book is, let's go here. It should be, parables go on quite a while. Here the scenario of the end time. Oh my gosh, the parables really do go on for a long time. When I did a commentary on Enoch, I did it for here. Oh, you can't see because it's blurred. But in outside the Bible, I did the commentary on Enoch, and they asked me to do it, and they gave me a really crazy deadline, and I took it seriously because I was a little baby scholar, and I didn't understand that deadlines are completely meaningless in academia. And they were like, "Oh, you have to do all the parables." I'm like, "I can't do all the parables of Enoch in the time you've given me. I'm just going to have to do some of them. I can't do all of them. They're too long. There's too much." And the amount, like, they gave me like a few months. And they're like, "Okay." And it was such a shame because, and everyone, I was in a fellowship, everyone in the fellowship told me, they're like, "Miriam, that's not a real deadline. It's not even close to the real deadline." And I didn't believe them because I wasn't used to this idea that in academia, deadlines are really, really meaningless. And it's too bad because I could have written a commentary on all the parables and I did not. that's my that's the punchline. Parables were too darn long and I didn't realize. Okay. Book of the Luminaries, it's usually called the Astronomical Book of Enoch. Now, the Astronomical Book of Enoch, again, it also survived at Qumran. It's very different in the version at Qumran. There was clearly some kind of corruption and that happened, or, it's very different. It's not a little different. Like if you don't even just, you don't even do a critical edition, you do, okay, and this is the astronomical book. Like you'll have a footnote and say, okay, this is the way it looks in Qumran. And here we have the other interpretation involving Enoch, where we have the idea that he was 365 years. So he went up to the heavens, saw everything there, had to live 365 years. Of course, he's going to be a source of astronomy. Now, we should recognize that there was a lot of astronomical kind of science that was being shared by scribes since the Babylonian Empire. Everyone was observing the stars, the moon, the sun. There was a lot of astronomical knowledge, and scribes in particular was a kind of a scribal school where they shared this knowledge. So it's very possible that you had kind of a scribal school that was part of writing books like this one. So let me, here we go. And here we have, so it's talking about the sun, sun, it starts talking about, it returns to the east and enters the sixth gate and emerges and sets through the sixth gate in 31 days. It's a whole thing is talking about a series of gates. There's a part where some of the gates are missing. There's a lot of corruption in this book, again, because it was being copied by people who didn't understand what was going on. I certainly barely, like once it talks, there are charts that you can look at that explains what it's talking about when it's saying it emerges on that day from the second gate and sets in the west through the second gate. It is in fact, it can be understood somewhat until it kind of, a lot of the phases of the moon. Let's kind of skip to the end. Where is, I know what I'm looking for and I'm not, here we are. And then we have a little treatise on the calendrical practice. Okay, this is saying, guys, you got to keep the stellar year. All right. Blessed are all the righteous, all the blessed who will walk in the ways of righteousness and have no sin like the sinners. In numbering all the days, the sun travels in the sky through the gates, entering and emerging for 30 days. And it's a kind of the account about it is true, its calculations. Thus, a year of 364 days is completed. You can say, well, the verse is 365, but in general, and at Qumran also, that the understanding was it's 364 days. Okay. The account about it is true, its calculation is precisely recorded, because the luminaries and the months, the festivals, the years, and the days he showed me and Uriel, to whom the Lord of the entire creation gave orders for me regarding the host of heaven, breathed on me. He has power in heaven over night and day to make light appear over humanity, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the heavenly powers which revolve in their circuits. So you have this idea that you must keep the solar year, right? And it's 364 days exact, right? No leap year, right? It's 364 days exactly. Okay, it doesn't stop there. It talks about different stars. It also has here you have, okay, here you have part of what they think might also be. See, it's possible that 4Q211 preserved part of the lost ending of the book, right? As where it's talking about different measures of the day. And so what you see here is it's essentially an astronomical treatise, and I rushed through it for a reason, because I can't add a lot here, right? You can see it gets very, very confusing. And in fact, there's a part where he explains kind of a discrepancy, and he's explaining the wrong discrepancy. The person who's writing this is kind of off about how to fix a certain astronomical problem. But the idea is that the solar year is connected to Enoch, and so he's calling on the authority of Enoch to say everyone to be keeping a solar year. Okay. Now I see that there are questions in the chat or comments. Take a look and stop the share. Okay. All right. Okay, so going back, yes, the idea of being in a holding pattern until Judgment Day sometimes seems more Christian than Jewish. Purgatory. I always find that in the Jewish version of Gehenna, of hell, is actually a nicer version of the Christian version of purgatory. Because the Christian version of purgatory, you never get out. And the Jewish idea of Gehenna is you suffer for your sins and then you get out, right? Then you kind of get into heaven. Which I always think is the literal meaning of purgatory, right? To purge you from your sins and then you get into heaven, right? That's kind of the later Jewish idea of Gehenna, that you go to hell, you get purged from your sins, and then you go into heaven. Whereas the Christian idea of purgatory, at least the one that I know from Dante, right, is you're just stuck there forever, right? That's it. Okay. Yafa says, yes?
Are you saying that the idea here in Enoch is like our Gehenna?
No. It is closer to what you would think of as a Christian purgatory, except that it has an end. It's a holding pen till the Judgment Day. I guess the Christian purgatory is a Christian purgatory till the Judgment Day, or is it just forever and ever and ever? I thought it was forever and ever and ever, but I don't know. I'm not an authority. This is more like a purgatory that they're kind of in a holding pen. The idea is that in the Judgment Day, there are going to be people who are really punished and people who are rewarded, and the righteous people have a nicer holding pen, right? It's not meant but everyone's kind of waiting for the Judgment Day. And it's interesting because at least I see it as somewhere in between this idea of Sheol, of just a pit, everyone just dies, everyone's dead, they're dead, right? To this full afterlife, right? I feel like it's the in-between, where we can't really conceive of a full afterlife in heaven because that doesn't make sense because we're people, right? So they stay there in heaven waiting, and then they're rewarded or punished in the Judgment Day. And then later on, we get this idea where your soul has this whole existence where you can talk about, and much later, you can talk about righteous people eating, shor habar, right? They're eating, really good food up there. Like, but that's less of a Jewish idea, because I feel like, I mean, it is a Jewish idea. I can't say it is, right? That you have the righteous are at this table with God, as it were, right? That is heaven, for the most righteous, right? Kind of a great Shabbat table where they're sitting there eating good food, singing songs, and it's Shabbat table in the sky kind of thing. But certainly I think in this period there's still this idea, well, we're flesh, and that doesn't belong in heaven, really. You have to kind of wait there until you get your reward and punishment. Now, and then there's this kind of new creation, as it were. And you see that in a lot of different works. And that's why the idea of resurrection at the end of time becomes so important, because how are things going to get evened out? Everyone has to be resurrected. And something like, it's only the righteous who get resurrected, and the evil are really like dead. But different ideas there, and we'll see some of those also as we continue with some of the more interesting predictions related to Enoch and to the story of the Watchers in a future class. So Yaffa says, I think it's interesting that Abel dwells in the holding room to punish Cain's descendants. The idea that after death, victims will punish their tormentors. I think it's Abel's crying out, and his crying out guarantees that Cain's descendants will be punished. And I think it's also connected to his blood is crying out to me from the ground. That verse, right? His blood is crying out to me from the ground. So that's a kind of another, almost an interpretation on that's that blood crying out. It's Cain's spirit is crying, and that ensures that his descendants will continue to be punished. Do I think the Book of Enoch had significant impact on later Judaism, including the Judaism we are familiar with? We see, and I've mentioned this, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about the story of the Watchers. We do have that idea of Uzzah and Azael that kind of continues on, that they are the Watchers, right? We have that in the Gemara, and it's explained by Rashi. So we have that continuation. The stories of Enoch come back into Judaism, right, through a later midrash, and it's not clear how much of that is that just coming from Christianity, or have there been more traditions. Now, we do have we do have later books of Enoch which are rabbinic, right, but are not really connected to this Book of Enoch. In other words, Enoch as a character continues to have a certain amount of weight in Jewish tradition, but what we find in this Book of Enoch has perhaps less. Even and we can address that. We can address that in a future class in terms of what kind of life it has in Judaism, but not as much as you would expect. In other words, Enoch as a character does have a certain amount, because there's still stuff written about Enoch, but these works, not really, except this Watcher story, which is so important seems so important to Second Temple Jews, really kind of goes by the wayside. Yeah.
I believe, in answer to the question of the influence of Enoch on later Jewish literature, if I'm not mistaken, there is a story in one of the books of Enoch which seems to be a precursor to the formative story of Kabbalah about the 4 people who entered the Pardes, and the only one who came out intact was Rabbi Akiva, where Rabbi Akiva sort of takes the role that.
Well, that's not just because that's not in the Zohar. That's in the Gemara. That's much earlier. It's not the Zohar.
In the Gemara. Yeah, that's right. That's in the Gemara. But it's still the Gemara is still considered later than Enoch.
You need to direct me to where that is in Enoch, because I'm not familiar with anyone going bad, because only Enoch goes up there and he's fine, right? Yeah, Enoch goes up. I have to re-examine that. Cool, right? So there may be now there is a rabbinic Book of Enoch that maybe has something with that, but that's later in rabbinic. So that is so maybe it's in there, right? But that already would be like, okay, which direction is it going in? I don't know in First Enoch where anyone goes bad because they went up. Like the angels go bad, these angels go off, right? Because they leave their divine path. But there isn't an idea of a person, because that would beg the question, which also is a question in the Gemara, where it's like, okay, they went into paradise. Well, if it's going to turn them bad, why did you let them in? Like, if these people couldn't handle it, how'd they get into heaven, right? So you don't have that problem in Enoch. If you're not gonna be able to make it, you don't get into heaven. Enoch is cool. It doesn't mess him up at all. He sees everything, no theological problems whatsoever. He's able to report. So you have yeah.
He seems, I don't see any personality though. He seems very passive. Things happen to him. Is that like an expectation, like me, a modern person, thinking, oh, I'm going to learn about Enoch. He had a hot temper, or he was a nice guy. That's
what I have to say. Like I mean, my field is Second Temple literature, but when you say, like, if you tell me, I love biblical, like Hebrew Bible, I'm like, it's the stuff before it is not worth it. The stuff after it is derivative. Because you read Yaakov has a personality, right? If you've read Odysseus' Scar, right, that essay, right, of talking about comparing Odysseus, Homer's Odysseus with like Yaakov, right, where or sacrifice of Isaac, like he has the whole story about Odysseus has a scar, and Homer gives you this whole story about where the scar is from. He leaves nothing to the imagination. Whereas the sacrifice of Isaac has these huge gaps that just make you kind of fill it in. And at the same time, Odysseus, and this would bother me when I was like a kid reading the Odyssey, that Odysseus, for 30 years, he stays exactly the same. Like, he doesn't get old. He doesn't change his personality. He learns absolutely nothing. He just goes through life, and then he comes back to his wife and he wins, right? And he doesn't change. Supposedly he's 30 years, he doesn't change. Whereas Yaakov goes from kind of a scared young guy who's like, he has to deal with his brother, and then he's kind of wheeling and dealing and tricking Lavan, and then he gets to be this crotchety old man, right? He's like, short and crappy has been my life, right? So you really see the development, and he's got a personality. You see he's got a personality. Esau has a personality, right? When he cries, he's like, don't you have a blessing left for me? And he cries, and you're like, oh, gee, right? Like biblical people have personalities. Things happen to them. You feel for them, even if they're not like completely good guys. You're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's rough, right? And it's like it's that evocative nature of brevity, right? Of saying the few words that take you and reach you and pull you in. And unfortunately, in Second Temple literature, it uses a lot of words, not a ton of personality. There are some fun little scenes, like there are, like some fun little scenes that you get with different characters. You do, but you don't have characters, for the most part, feel pretty flat. They're not super, they don't have that. And I, anyone who can feel free to like jump in and correct me, but they're not, characters aren't super different from each other. You're not like, oh yeah, this is this guy uses short little words because he's not that, right? Like, I mentioned this before, but just as an aside, so Moshe Greenberg had a great lecture series that was written up about prayer in the Hebrew Bible, and he talks about how, and he's not talking about like Tehillim Psalms, which is like liturgical prayer. He's talking about it's like spontaneous prayer. When characters in biblical narrative pray, they're praying in their own words. Their personality shows in their prayers. So like Yaakov will be like, makes a deal with God, right? And Shimshon uses short little words, like, this is what I want, just let me kill them. And like, and the idea is that anyone can speak to God. Anyone can pray to God using their words, because everyone has a relationship with God, right? And you really see that in biblical prayer. And it's people are consistent. You see their personalities and the way they relate to things. So yeah, and but so that's why it's interesting to look at Second Temple literature as interpretation. And sometimes literarily it's nice, and other times literarily it's going to let you down a little. Thank you for joining me. We will continue with the books of Enoch next week, and then we will go on to the story of the Watchers and how that develops. Okay, so that's the plan for the next few classes.